Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really plunging into a fascinating collection of foundational texts.
That's right. We're looking specifically at chapters 17 through 20 of the Gospel of Matthew.
Yeah, think of this as a guided exploration. We'll navigate these narratives, dialogues, these really pivotal moments
Mm,
to try and unearth the core insights about this compelling figure, his teachings, and, his profound impact.
absolutely. And our mission really is to cut through the layers, get to the essence of these ancient accounts for you, the listener.
Exactly. We have this remarkable set of sources here. They offer glimpses into moments of, intense spiritual experience.
Right, and intimate interactions with his closest followers, plus these thought-provoking responses he gives to some really challenging questions.
So for you, the learner, these chapters are just a treasure trove, a chance to understand a figure who's indelibly shaped religious history.
We'll be focusing on key events, key pronouncements that reveal fundamental principles, things about belief, community, even the very fabric of reality as they understood it then.
Okay, let's unpack this. Where should we start? How about that really extraordinary, visually stunning event, the Transfiguration, Matthew 17.
Perfect starting point. So we see Jesus takes Peter, James, and John, his inner circle, really up a high mountain, sets them apart.
And mountains, in these kinds of narratives, they often signify something, don't they? Places where the earthly and the divine feel, closer.
That's a crucial point about the setting, yeah. And what happens there is, well, it's dramatic. Matthew tells us Jesus was transfigured.
Transfigured. What does that actually mean here?
His face shone like the sun, it says. His clothes became dazzlingly white, white as light. It's this incredible visual.
Wow.
And then, adding to this, Moses and Elias appear. They're talking with Jesus.
Moses and Elias, think about the weight of that. Moses, the lawgiver.
And Elias, or Elijah the great prophet, their presence suggests this deep connection, linking Jesus right back to the foundations of their faith. Moses represents the law, Elias the prophets.
So it's like showing he fulfills both, or is connected to both.
Precisely. It signifies his connection, perhaps even his fulfillment of these core tenets. And Peter's reaction, well, it's very human, isn't it?
Yeah. He blurts out something about building 3 shelters, 3 tabernacles, one for Jesus, one for Moses, one for Elias.
It's almost like he wants to capture it, to hold on to this incredible fleeting moment, make it permanent somehow.
But he doesn't get the chance, does he?
No. Even as he's speaking, this bright cloud overshadows them, and a voice comes from the cloud.
The voice from heaven. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear ye him. That's unambiguous.
Utterly. A profound divine endorsement. And the disciples' reaction. Totally understandable.
They fall on their faces, terrified.
It's sheer awe. A recognition of the magnitude of what they're witnessing. Staggering.
And then Jesus reassures them.
Right. Amidst all this divine glory and fear, you get this gentle, human touch. Arise and be not afraid.
And when they look up.
Moses and Elias are gone. Only Jesus remains.
And then there's that instruction as they come down the mountain, keep it secret.
Yes. Tell the vision to no man until the Son of Man be risen again from the dead.
That's fascinating. Why the secrecy? Why not shout this from the rooftops immediately?
That's a great question. Perhaps the full meaning wouldn't really land, wouldn't be comprehensible until the resurrection provided the ultimate context.
Ah, okay. So sharing it too soon might lead to misunderstanding, or maybe false expectations about who he was.
Exactly. It likely served as this powerful private confirmation for these key disciples, strengthening them maybe for the hard times they didn't yet know were coming.
Right. Okay. So following this incredible experience, the disciples have a question. It's about Elias again.
They ask, why then say the scribes that Elias must first come? They're trying to square what they've just seen, or maybe just a general expectation, with the teachings they know.
And Jesus' answer is interesting. He confirms Elias will come and restore things.
But then he pivots. He says Elias has already come, and they didn't recognize him. They did unto him whatsoever they listed.
And he's talking about John the Baptist there, right?
Clearly. The text says the disciples understood he spoke of John the Baptist, and then he subtly links John's fate, his suffering and rejection, to his own impending suffering.
So this gets into prophecy and how it's interpreted or maybe misinterpreted.
Exactly. It's about wrestling with expectations. Jesus is suggesting God's plan can unfold in, unexpected ways. Significant figures might not look like people expect them to.
A recurring theme, you said. Recognizing the divine in unexpected places.
Precisely. It challenges them and us to look beyond surface appearances.
Okay, so then the mood shifts quite dramatically. They come down from the mountain.
And they encounter a crowd and a man in distress. He brings his son who's suffering terribly, described as lunatic, suffering violent seizures, falling into fire and water.
A desperate situation. And the father says he brought the boy to the disciples.
But they couldn't heal him.
And Jesus' reaction seems quite sharp here. Oh, faithless and perverse generation. There's a real edge to his words.
There is a sense of frustration, perhaps. It highlights this gap between the authority he'd given them and their inability to exercise it consistently in that moment.
So Jesus steps in.
He does. He rebukes the devil, the text says, or the afflicting force, and the child is cured instantly from that very hour.
The contrast is stark. Disciples fail. Jesus succeeds immediately. What was missing?
Well, they ask him that privately afterwards. Why could not we cast him out?
And his answer.
It's direct, because of your unbelief.
Yeah.
And then come that famous line about faith like a grain of mustard seed.
Right. If you have faith that small, you can move mountains. Nothing impossible.
It suggests it's not just intellectual agreement, maybe, but a deeper, unwavering trust. A reliance that unlocks something.
He also adds something else, doesn't he, about prayer and fasting.
Yes. Howbeit this kind goeth not out, but by prayer and fasting, implying some challenges need more. A deeper spiritual engagement, perhaps.
So for the listener, this raises questions about belief. Is it static, or is it an active practice? Maybe even a demanding one sometimes.
That's a great way to put it. An active, potentially demanding practice.
Okay, moving on from that healing. While they're still in Galilee, Jesus brings up his death and resurrection again.
Yes, he foretells it again. The Son of Man will be betrayed, killed, and raised on the third day.
And the disciples' reaction.
The text says they were exceeding sorry, deeply grieved.
It must have been incredibly jarring for them. That mountaintop glory, then this stark prediction of suffering and death. Hard to reconcile.
Absolutely. This constant foreshadowing injects a sobering reality. The transfiguration was a glimpse of glory, yes, but he keeps bringing it back to the suffering that has to come first.
That tension.
Yeah.
Glory and suffering.
It becomes a central paradox of his mission. You have to wonder how this constant talk of his death was affecting them, their understanding.
Probably creating a lot of confusion, maybe fear. It's hard to grasp. Then we get this seemingly smaller incident, paying the tribute money.
Right, Capernaum. Tax collectors asked Peter, "Doth not your master pay tribute?" A local tax, likely the temple tax.
And Jesus, knowing this happened, asks Peter a question first when he gets back to the house.
Yeah, he asks about earthly kings. Who do they tax? Their own children or strangers? Peter says strangers.
So Jesus says,
Then are the children free, suggesting perhaps that those connected to the ultimate king, God, might have a different standing regarding earthly or even religious obligations, spiritual citizenship versus earthly rules.
it's a subtle point about freedom, but then he doesn't tell Peter not to pay it.
Now, quite the opposite. He says, notwithstanding lest we should offend them, to avoid causing unnecessary trouble or misunderstanding.
He tells Peter to do something rather unusual.
Yes. Go fishing, cast a hook, and the first fish you catch will have a coin in its mouth. A stater, enough to pay the tax for both of them.
A miraculous solution. What's the insight here? It seems almost quirky.
Well, it's fascinating. He asserts a principle of freedom, but then chooses practical wisdom. He navigates the system without causing offense.
So it's about knowing when to stand on principle and when to maybe accommodate for the sake of peace or the bigger picture.
That seems to be the takeaway. Engaging with the world without needless conflict, even if you feel you have grounds for exemption, it's quite nuanced.
Okay, that brings us to Matthew chapter 18. And the disciples are back to worrying about status.
Yes, a very human concern. They come right out and ask him, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?
They're still thinking in terms of earthly hierarchies, aren't they?
It seems so. And Jesus' response is, again, completely unexpected, profoundly symbolic.
He calls over a little child.
Puts the child right in the middle of them. It says, unless you turn and become like little children, you won't even enter the kingdom.
Never mind being the greatest. So what does like little children mean here? Innocence, trust.
Probably elements of all of those. Humility, certainly. A lack of pretense, maybe an openness, a dependence. It's a radical inversion of power and status as the world sees it.
So humbling yourself like a child, that's greatness in his kingdom.
Exactly. And he doubles down, saying whoever receives one such little child in his name receives him. It elevates the status of the humble, the seemingly unimportant.
Then comes a very, very strong warning.
Extremely strong, about causing one of these little ones which believe in me to stumble, to sin.
The imagery is brutal. Better to have a millstone hung around your neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea.
It's intentionally shocking, isn't it? It underscores the immense gravity, the terrible responsibility of influencing the vulnerable in faith. Leading people astray, especially the young or new in faith, has devastating consequences.
He continues these warnings about offenses, stumbling blocks. Woe to the world because of offenses.
Right. He acknowledges they're inevitable, but woe to that man by whom the offense cometh. Personal responsibility is key.
And then that advice that sounds so extreme, cutting off a hand, flecking out an eye if it causes sin.
Again, it's powerful metaphorical language.
Yeah.
Not literal self-mutilation.
Right.
It's about the absolute necessity of dealing radically, decisively with anything that leads you into sin. Take extreme measures to protect your spiritual well-being. Don't compromise.
It conveys the seriousness, then the tone shifts again, doesn't it, to something much gentler.
Yes, the beautiful parable of the lost sheep.
He starts by saying, don't despise these little ones, their angels see God's face. The Son of Man came to save the lost.
And then the parable. A shepherd has 100 sheep. One goes missing.
And he leaves the 99.
Leaves the 99 safe in the wilderness and goes searching relentlessly for the one that's lost.
And the joy when he finds it.
More joy over that one found sheep, Jesus says, than over the 99 that never strayed.
It's such a powerful image of God's heart, isn't it? That personal, persistent care.
Absolutely. It highlights the immense value of every single individual, even the one who seems insignificant or has gone astray. It's about redemption, relentless love, and the explicit will of the Father that none should perish.
Beautiful. Okay, then we get some very practical instructions, how to handle conflict within the community.
Right. Dealing with a brother or sister who sins against you, there's a clear step-by-step process.
First, go privately, just the two of you.
If they listen, you've won them over. If not,
Take one or two others along so there are witnesses.
if they still refuse to listen,
Tell it to the church, the community.
and if they still refuse to listen even to the community,
Then treat them as an outsider, like a heathen man and a publican. Which sounds harsh, but it's the end of a process aimed at reconciliation.
it provides a framework,
Yeah.
balancing personal responsibility with communal accountability. It's about restoration, ideally, but also setting boundaries when necessary.
And right after this, he gives that authority about binding and loosing. What exactly does that mean?
It's generally understood as the authority given to the community, represented by the apostles here, to make decisions on matters of doctrine and practice, to discern God's will for the community, and that these decisions made on earth would be ratified or recognized in heaven, setting norms, essentially.
Okay. And then the promise of his presence.
Where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. A powerful assurance of his presence, even in the smallest gathering of believers.
This leads Peter to ask a very practical question about all this focus on reconciliation.
Yes, Peter asks, Lord, how oft shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Until 7 times. 7 seemed like a generous number, perhaps.
And Jesus' answer just blows that out of the water.
Completely. I say not unto thee until 7 times.
Yeah.
But until 70 times 7.
Which isn't meant as a literal number to count, right? It means indefinitely, limitlessly.
Exactly. It signifies boundless, unending forgiveness. And to drive this incredibly high standard home, he tells another parable.
The parable of the unforgiving servant. This one is intense.
It really is. A king decides to settle accounts. A servant owes him an astronomical sum, 10,000 talents. Impossible to repay.
The servant begs for mercy.
And the king, moved with compassion, forgives the entire debt. Just cancels it. An unbelievable act of grace.
Yeah. But then
That same servant goes out and finds a fellow servant who owes him a tiny amount, by comparison, 100 pence or denarii.
Yeah.
A few months' wages, maybe, compared to an unimaginable fortune.
And he grabs him, demands repayment. The fellow servant begs for time.
Just like he himself had begged the king. But the first servant refuses. He has the man thrown into prison until he can pay the small debt.
The lack of mercy is shocking, given what he just received.
It is. And the other servants see this, they're disturbed, and they tell the king.
And the king is furious.
Understandably, he calls the servant back. O thou wicked servant, I forgave thee all that debt, because thou desiredst me. Shouldest not thou also have had compassion on thy fellow servant, even as I had pity on thee?
And the consequence.
The king reinstates the original massive debt, and hands him over to be punished until he pays it all, which is impossible.
And the final line connects it directly to the listener, to us.
So likewise shall my heavenly Father do also unto you, if ye from your hearts forgive not everyone his brother their trespasses.
Wow. So our forgiveness from God is somehow linked to our willingness to forgive others. It's not just a suggestion, it's crucial.
It makes forgiveness fundamental, not just an action, but an attitude of the heart, mirroring the grace received. A very challenging teaching.
Definitely. Okay, turning the page to Matthew 19, the focus shifts again. The Pharisees are back.
And they come testing him, this time on the issue of divorce. Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause, trying to draw him into existing debates?
How does he respond? Does he engage with their legal interpretations?
No, characteristically, he goes deeper, back to the beginning, back to creation.
Have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female?
Right. And said, for this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. He anchors marriage in God's original design.
So his conclusion is,
Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. A very strong statement on the intended permanence of marriage.
they push back, though. What about Moses allowing a certificate of divorce?
Jesus acknowledges Moses permitted it, but says it was because of the hardness of your hearts. It wasn't the original ideal.
And then he gives his own standard.
Yes. He states that whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, porneia, and marries another, commits adultery.
That's a very strict standard, especially for that time.
Extremely strict. And the disciples' reaction shows just how strict they found it.
What do they say?
They say to him, if the case of the man be so with his wife, it is not good to marry. Essentially, if it's that binding, maybe it's better to stay single.
That's quite a reaction.
It is. And Jesus acknowledges it's a hard teaching. All men cannot receive this saying, save they to whom it is given.
And he talks about different reasons people might remain unmarried. Eunuchs.
Yes, he speaks of those born that way, those made that way by men, and those who have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake, those who choose celibacy for spiritual reasons. He concludes, he that is able to receive it, let him receive it.
So it's a complex picture, a high view of marriage, but also an acknowledgement of singleness as a valid path for the kingdom.
Exactly. It affirms the profound nature of the marital bond while also making space for other callings.
Okay, immediately following this complex discussion, we get a really lovely, simple scene.
Yes, the blessing of the little children. People start bringing infants and young children to Jesus.
For him to put his hands on them and pray, a blessing.
But the disciples rebuke them. They try to send them away. Maybe they thought Jesus was too busy or the children were unimportant.
And Jesus' reaction?
He's displeased with the disciples. He says, suffer little children and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven.
Of such is the kingdom, again, connecting children directly to the nature of the kingdom.
Precisely. It powerfully reinforces their value, their importance in his eyes. Maybe their trust, their humility again. He then lays his hands on them, blesses them. A simple, tender moment, but deeply significant.
It really is. Okay, next up is a very famous encounter, the rich young man.
Yes. Someone comes running up, kneels before him, and asks that fundamental question, good master, what good thing shall I do that I may have eternal life?
He seems sincere, eager, and Jesus initially points him to the commandments.
Right. Keep the commandments. Don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't bear false witness, honor your parents, love your neighbor.
And the young man's response?
All these things have I kept from my youth up. What lack I yet? He feels he's done the right things, but senses something is still missing.
And Jesus gives him the answer, the missing piece.
And it's a radical challenge. If thou wilt be perfect, go and sell that thou hast, and give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me.
Wow. Sell everything, give it away, and become a disciple.
It's a total reorientation of life, away from reliance on wealth and status, towards complete reliance on God and following Jesus.
And the young man's reaction tells the story.
He went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. He couldn't do it. The attachment was too strong.
This leads Jesus to teach his disciples something difficult.
Very difficult. He says, verily I say unto you, that a rich man shall hardly enter into the kingdom of heaven.
And then the even more famous image.
And again I say unto you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God.
That sounds impossible. And the disciples react that way too, right?
And they're astonished.
Yeah.
Who then can be saved? If even the rich, often seen as blessed by God, find it that hard, what hope is there for anyone?
And Jesus' answer is key.
With men, this is impossible. But with God, all things are possible. Salvation isn't ultimately about human effort or merit, even shedding wealth, but about God's grace and power.
That's a crucial clarification. It's not just about being poor, but about reliance on God.
Exactly. It's about where your ultimate trust and security lie. Wealth makes that reliance harder, provides a false sense of security.
So Peter, ever practical, pipes up then.
Ha, yes. Behold, we have forsaken all and followed thee. What shall we have, therefore? Basically, what's in it for us?
A fair question, maybe.
And Jesus doesn't rebuke him. He gives them an assurance.
He promises them a significant role.
Yes, in the regeneration, when the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, they too will sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel, a position of authority and honor.
And a broader promise, too.
For everyone who has left houses or siblings or parents or children or lands, for his name's sake they will receive 100-fold and inherit eternal life. Sacrifice brings great reward.
But then he ends with that paradoxical statement again.
But many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first. A warning against assuming privilege, a hint that God's economy works differently.
And this leads directly into the next parable in chapter 20.
The parable of the laborers in the vineyard, which perfectly illustrates that first-last idea.
Okay, set the scene for us.
A landowner goes out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. He agrees with them on the standard daily wage, a penny, a denarius.
Then he goes out again later.
Yes, at the 3rd hour, around 9 a.m., the 6th hour, noon, the 9th hour, 3 p.m., and even the 11th hour, around 5 p.m., just an hour before quitting time. Each time he finds people standing idle and sends them into the vineyard, telling the later groups he'll pay them whatsoever is right.
So they work different amounts of time, some all day, some just an hour.
Exactly. Then evening comes, time to pay up. The owner tells his steward to call the laborers and pay them, starting with the last hired and going to the first.
Starting with the last, okay.
So the ones hired at the 11th hour come up, and they each receive a penny, the full day's wage for just 1 hour's work.
Wow, so the ones who worked all day must be thinking.
They're thinking they'll get much more, but when their turn comes, they also receive just 1 penny each.
I can see why they'd be upset.
They start murmuring against the landowner. These last have wrought but 1 hour, and thou hast made them equal unto us, which has borne the burden and heat of the day. It feels unfair by human standards.
How does the landowner respond?
He addresses one of them directly. Friend, I do thee no wrong. Does not thou agree with me for a penny? He fulfilled his contract with them.
Okay, fair enough.
Then he says, Take that thine is, and go thy way. I will give unto this last, even as unto thee. Is it not lawful for me to do what I will with mine own? Is thine eye evil because I am good?
Is thine eye evil because I am good? What does that mean, evil eye?
It refers to envy, jealousy, begrudging the good fortune of others. He's asking, are you resentful because I choose to be generous?
So the parable isn't really about fair wages. It's about
God's sovereignty and his astounding, seemingly unfair generosity. His grace isn't based on strict merit or hours worked. He can give extravagantly to whomever he chooses, even those who seem less deserving by human calculation.
And the lesson reinforces the previous point.
Explicitly. So the last shall be first, and the first last. For many be called, but few chosen. It challenges our assumptions about reward, entitlement, and the nature of God's favor.
A really thought-provoking parable. Okay, what comes next?
As they're heading towards Jerusalem, the final stage of the journey, Jesus pulls the 12 disciples aside again.
For another prediction.
The third explicit prediction of his death and resurrection, and this time it's even more detailed.
What details does he add?
He says he'll be betrayed to the chief priests and scribes, they'll condemn him to death, and then significantly they'll deliver him to the Gentiles.
To the Romans, basically.
Yes, to be mocked, scourged, and crucified. And then the crucial part, and the 3rd day he shall rise again.
The repetition just underscores the inevitability, the certainty of this path. He knows exactly what's coming.
It seems so. He's consciously walking towards it. It must have been almost unbearable for the disciples to hear, even if they didn't fully grasp it yet.
And perhaps they didn't fully grasp it because right after this grim prediction, we get another request about status.
Indeed. The mother of James and John comes to Jesus with her sons.
Zebedee's wife, what does she ask?
She worships him and asks for a specific favor. Grant that these my 2 sons may sit, the one on thy right hand and the other on the left, in thy kingdom. Positions of highest honor and power.
Talk about awkward timing right after he predicted his suffering and death.
It shows how differently they were still thinking about his kingdom.
Hmm.
Jesus addresses the sons directly. Ye know not what ye ask.
And he challenges them.
Are ye able to drink of the cup that I shall drink of, and to be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with? He's talking about sharing his suffering, his fate.
And they say,
They confidently reply, we are able, perhaps not fully understanding the depth of his words.
what does Jesus say to that?
He confirms they will indeed share his suffering, drink indeed of my cup and be baptized with the baptism.
Oh.
But granting those specific positions of honor is not mine to give, but it shall be given to them for whom it is prepared of my Father. It's God's prerogative.
How do the other disciples react when they hear about this request?
They are not pleased. The text says the 10 were moved with indignation against the two brothers. Clearly, ambition wasn't limited to James and John.
So Jesus uses this moment, this internal tension, as another teaching opportunity.
He calls them all together and contrasts worldly power with the way things should be among them.
How does he describe worldly rulers?
You know that the princes of the Gentiles exercise dominion over them, and they that are great exercise authority upon them. Power flows from the top down, involves ruling over people.
But among his followers?
But it shall not be so among you. But whosoever will be great among you, let him be your minister or servant. And whosoever will be chief among you, let him be your servant or slave.
A complete reversal again. Greatness is service. Leadership is slavery.
Exactly. And he grounds it in his own example. Even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister, and to give his life a ransom for many.
That's the ultimate definition of servant leadership, giving his life.
It's central to his teaching and his identity. True greatness isn't about status or power over others, but about selfless service, even sacrificial service.
A profound lesson born out of their very human squabble. Okay, we're nearing the end of chapter 20. What's the final scene?
As they're leaving Jericho on the way up to Jerusalem, there's another healing.
Who do they encounter?
2 blind men sitting by the roadside. When they hear Jesus is passing by, they start shouting,
What do they shout?
Have mercy on us, O Lord, thou Son of David. They recognize him, use a messianic title.
And the crowd tries to shut them up.
Yes, the multitude tells them to be quiet. But they just cry out louder, Have mercy on us, O Lord, thou Son of David. They are persistent.
Does Jesus ignore them?
No, he stops. He calls them over and asks a simple question. What will ye that I shall do unto you?
He makes them articulate their need.
Right. And they reply, Lord, that our eyes may be opened.
And his response.
The text says Jesus had compassion on them. He touched their eyes.
And the result.
Immediately their eyes received sight, and they followed him. Instantaneous healing, and they immediately become his followers.
It's a powerful image to end on. Compassion, power, restoration, and discipleship all wrapped up together.
Absolutely. It vividly shows his response to persistent faith, his power to heal and restore, and the natural response of following him once sight is given. A fitting conclusion to these chapters preparing for the final events in Jerusalem.
So as we bring this deep dive to a close for today, we've really journeyed through some incredibly rich material in Matthew 17 to 20.
We certainly have. We've seen this figure teaching with immense authority, performing acts that defy easy explanation.
Right, and consistently challenging the conventional wisdom, the fundamental assumptions of his time, and frankly, often of ours too.
Themes kept recurring, didn't they? The power of faith, but also its challenges. The absolute necessity of forgiveness.
Yeah, and that surprising path to true greatness through humility and service, and just the complexities, the demands of what it means to actually follow him.
And for you, the learner listening today, these ancient texts, they still speak, don't they? They offer these remarkably relevant insights into questions we still grapple with.
Timeless human questions about belief, about how we live in community, that search for meaning.
And the nature of the divine, which often seems to show up in unexpected ways in these stories. They really invite us to look at our own values or priorities.
Our own responses to these big questions.
Okay.
So maybe a final thought to leave with everyone, reflecting on everything we've explored. The transfiguration, the healings, the parables, the tough teachings. Is there one single idea or concept from these chapters that, for you personally, resonates most deeply, or perhaps presents the greatest challenge?
That's a great reflective question.
And then maybe think about how the implications of that one idea might, stretch beyond first century Judea. How might it inform your life, your understanding, how you interact with the world today?
Definitely something worth pondering.
Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.